I went to this startup conference in Oakland with a friend, and a random angel investor I'm chatting with was like, oh, like, what do you do? And so I made it up. I was like, oh, like we do like the first like mushroom infused food product.
Hello and welcome to Starting Small. My name is Cameron Nagle, and what you're about to hear is a resilient story to an entrepreneur's journey over the brand that we know and consume today. At Starting Small, I believe that everyone has a story to tell under one philosophy. Everyone starts small. Even these founders have once started where you are, in their parents' kitchen, basement, out of a wagon, and many more. At Starting Small, we discuss the strategies used, the obstacles overcome, and the successes of an entrepreneur's journey. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of Starting Small, and make sure to leave a review to let us know how you enjoyed it. Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Starting Small. Today, I'm joined by Parker Olson of Forij. Parker, thank you so much for joining me today.
What up, what up, what up?
Man, well, yeah, thanks for joining me. And just to kick things off, let's take it back to your upbringing. I know you're in your, maybe your childhood home. I'm not sure, but where did you grow up and what was your childhood like?
I'm at the alma house, alma mater, alma house. I'm at my parents' place right now. It was just Mother's Day, so flew in, surprised the ma. Let's see, I'm the youngest of three, all boys. My parents are from Midwest, but we grew up on the East Coast outside of Boston. Like middle-class family. Let's see. I feel like there's some pretty good stories from upbringing. There's a favorite one that my mom likes to tell where, so in elementary school, we always used to have like a raffle, you know, like you could buy tickets and then there's like all these items and then you can like buy tickets for items.
Yeah.
And I was in kindergarten. This is from K through 5, and I was really set on getting the TV, and like it was like a 4-inch by 4-inch TV, and it was like the highest priced item, and I was like pumped on it, you know. And typically, like a lot of those bigger items, like the older kids are kind of like usually kind of dominate that flow, but I would wait in the parking lot after school, and I would like approach all the parents and I like had them buy, like I forget, like you could sell stuff for raffle tickets, and I was just like playing the like cute little kindergartner, and I like every day for like 4 weeks like just got a ridiculous amount of tickets and like won the TV. And I just remember it was like this thing that like my mom still talks about, of like other parents were like, is that your son? And she's like, yeah. And they're like, oh, like, do you have him doing this? And she's like, no, he just like really wants the TV. And it was this just like, you know, like desire for this TV that I was willing to just do anything for. And I didn't realize it was like socially out of place to just be like approaching all these parents, especially like it was kind of like a 5th grader item, you know?
Yeah.
So that's always kind of a story, but you know, just being youngest, I just felt like maybe, you know, you kind of always got to fend for yourself a little bit. And you know, I was just like, didn't really realize some of the social norms that were there, and, you know, would frequently break them quite often. So that was kind of upbringing. And then, you know, always was sort of a rule breaker, kind of growing up, and, you know, was kind of an average student, average athlete, but like very social, like really enjoyed social dynamics in school and like having friends and socializing and whatnot. And then, you know, started kind of getting into some entrepreneurial pursuits really in middle school. So started selling like little, like, you ever play lacrosse?
For fun, I have not at school or anything. Yeah.
So you have to like break in a pocket, you know, there's like the pocket on the head. And so I was making these little like screwdriver. I would melt the screwdriver into like lacrosse balls, and they'd be like pocket molders, and so I was selling those for a while.
Oh wow.
And all sorts of stuff. And then, you know, that was sort of kind of some of the upbringing, and just under kind of 2 brothers early on.
Definitely. Well, normally we navigate into your entrepreneurial spirit at an early age, and you obviously already presented that. I'm curious, when you went to Minnesota, did you carry some of these entrepreneurship curiosities with you to school, and what did you end up studying there?
Yeah. So I originally went to school. I was pre-med in neuroscience.
Okay.
So really intrigued by neuroscience. I'd taken like an ad hoc course through MIT back in high school, and like fell in love with the concept. And in college, I didn't know anybody, so that was part of the draw for me. I went to the University of Minnesota. I didn't know anyone. And the first kid I met, what became like really clear to me about him was that he was making lots of money over Twitter, and I was like, okay, how do I do that?
Yeah.
And he was he like kind of liked to flex about it, but like didn't want to talk too much about it. And finally, like he kind of shows me, right? So like he was building these Twitter accounts up, and he was using other big accounts to do it. So like, you start putting out good content, you get bigger accounts to reshare your content, you gain their followers, and then it starts to build over time. And then you trade with like similar size accounts, and that builds.
Yeah.
And then you're like funneling traffic to, typically like an advertising type site. And then, you're kind of working from there and making, mostly ad money. Sometimes you can sponsor products, whatever. And so I was like, dude, like when he told me that, I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. I was like, I will give you every dollar I have to my name to like help me do this for an account. Like help me build an account to 100,000 followers.
Yeah.
And like, you can tell like he had never been approached like this. And I was like, I will give you every single dollar I have. And so I gave him $3,267 at the time, like 2 weeks into freshman year. And that like really started it. And he helped me build up this Twitter account, and I forget how much I like in total made off of it. Like maybe like 25K. I don't know. It was pretty good ROI.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But ultimately that, it required being on Twitter every 15 minutes to like trade reshares, and I became pretty unenticed by it. And I think it still exists, but it just sort of sunsetted. It was called Shit Your Parents Say at the time.
Wow. So yeah, diving in more to that, what did the exit say look like for yourself? Like what made you decide like, I want to move away from this, pursue something else, because you're making good money while in school. So what did that look like?
Yeah. I wish I had been a little bit smarter. I didn't get smarter until a little bit later in life, but I don't know. It was the first time in life where I felt anxiety. That was the first time where it was like every 15 minutes, like I have to go on and like address this and DM these people and like trade reshares and then like make sure an advertisement's working. And I kind of was like, not super passionate about this. It doesn't feel super great. Like sending traffic to these websites with advertisements on them. It was like top 10 college party schools,
Yeah.
So I don't know. It really came down to just a lack of personal interest, and like it just mentally I wasn't there, and for me the money wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
I wasn't I still don't think I'm super monetarily driven, but I definitely wasn't as much back then. And so found another job.
Definitely. So following your time at Minnesota then and prior to Forij, what kind of jobs were you working then?
Yeah, so I mostly worked at the summer camp over the summer. That was like my big source of income every year. And so that was some of my most valuable time. So it was a sleepaway camp I grew up at. And then during the school year, I did all sorts of kind of random stuff. So like an easy layup for me was lifeguarding. So I did some tutoring, some like teacher assistant type stuff. So just kind of anything that I could kind of casually do and would work into the schedule. And so, yeah, it wasn't nothing that I was too passionate about. Again, I just wish I had like found a passion earlier in life, kind of like yourself, man, and just been like, all right, we're going all in. Like that's sort of advice. Is just like, you gotta like figure out what you love to do and just like really dive all in.
Definitely. Exiting there, were you at the summer camp then following your school years too? What was the full-time job? What was that scope looking like for you prior to Forij?
Yeah, so I discovered this program that our school offered sophomore year, and it was called Consulting Enterprise. I'm not sure. So basically, it was actually a program for MBA students. And part of the job getting your MBA at the University of Minnesota is like they said, hey, we'll give you real life client facing experience through what they refer to as enterprises. And so local companies hire out the MBA talent. And this consulting enterprise, it was like strategy consulting, and there's groups of 5. And so if you go to grad school there, like you get to participate in this and like actually work with a real client who's paying you for your time and work. And they also accept 10 undergraduates every single year.
Wow.
And so I like heard about this, and it just sounded really cool. And I was starting to learn about consulting. And at that point I had transitioned. I was a finance and entrepreneurship major, and I was minoring in neuroscience. And was like, I'm not into really anything finance related. It doesn't feel super authentic to me, but this consulting thing sounds interesting. Like in my mind, it was like consulting teaches you how to solve problems, and then you become, you know, a weapon, essentially, like a career weapon, and then you can go anywhere because everybody needs people who can solve problems.
Yeah.
And so I saw that as like a massive opportunity. So I like met with everybody in the program, anybody who was running the program, and like really was like, I would do anything to be at this program. And so it's very grateful they let me in, and that's how I really got into like my interest in consulting. I got a summer internship in consulting my junior summer after kind of I parted ways with the camp. Although I kind of regret that. I wish I had gone back to the camp another summer. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, had a good time that summer, and it kind of solidified the interest for me. It's like, ooh, this is cool. Like you look at different things and you just have the time and space to help people solve their problems.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is, you know, communication and, you know, client facing based. So I really liked that. So that was kind of up until junior summer, and then go back to school. And then I actually, I studied abroad my last semester in college. And right before that, I, you know, was applying for full-time jobs. And are you familiar with like MBB at all?
I don't think so.
So MBB refers to three companies in management consulting. It's McKinsey, Bain, and BCG. BCG meaning Boston Consulting Group. And those are like the elite tier of management consulting companies. And so I, you know, interviewed there, and I went final round at all three and didn't get an offer from any of them. And that, I literally think that's like the last time I cried, honestly. I was like devastated, bro.
Yeah.
Because those are the types of companies where like you have that on your resume. Like not only do you get paid super well, you get to travel, but like you can literally go anywhere in your career after. And so, you know, I got a couple offers from some other smaller, you know, more like, I guess what I consider more tier 2 firms. And at that point I really wanted to go out west. So I took an offer with Grant Thornton and their strategy practice out in Seattle to more so just get out west. And like, it's like, okay, I'm still doing this thing. I'm still interested. You know, it isn't exactly where I want it to be, but it still is along that path. So that was kind of how I navigated, you know, college and how I initially got out to Seattle post college.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm curious, Forij comes in the midst of the pandemic. With your time working where you were at the time, did you notice something in your diet, or what was the problem that you experienced to then branch off to create your own CPG brand with Forij moving forward?
Yeah, is this a leading question or
an
honest one?
Both.
Yeah, so it started, you know, conceptually before COVID. So I'm working this job, I'm working at Grant Thornton. At first it's like pretty fun, and after about like 8 months I kind of was like, okay, like don't feel super challenged anymore, and was becoming restless at work. And like I'm a rule breaker, man. Like I'm like, I need something to be like taking up my energy, or I start to like break the rules and just entertain myself. It's not always good.
Yeah.
And so I'm at work and I'm like lacking autonomy. Like I'm like, I don't have to be, you know, it's like a Tuesday and I like don't have anything, you know, I've done all my work for that week and I just have to like be at the office because that's like what you have to do. And so I'm like, I don't get it. Like I don't want to be here. And so I lacked and really seeked some of that like autonomy. Like I needed some of that back. Mm-hmm. And so what I started to do was I figured, you know, what would be really interesting is like, I'm going to just try going vegan for 30 days. Like it was something to do. Like it was something that I thought would be entertaining and fun.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, yeah, I'm doing it, like whatever. And so, you know, I went vegan for 30 days and, you know, kind of sucked for a bit. And then after about like 17 or so days, like my body adjusted and it became a lot easier. And I was like, ooh, this, like, I feel really good. And it was the first time I've ever like looked at what I was eating. So I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then when that month ended, I was like, you know what, I'll do it again.
Yeah.
But this time, you know, I'm going to try being fully keto. So did that, kind of similar, like 15 to 17 days. It was like, that was a transition period. And then I started to feel pretty good. And I went through that and I did stuff like that for 18 months. So I tried like the Whole30 diet, vegan, vegetarian, pescatarian, Whole30, like keto, gluten-free, there's several others. And then it started kind of bleeding over into different lifestyles. So like 1 month I ended up sleeping outside in a tent for a month.
Wow.
Another one, you know, it was like, all right, I'm going to journal every single day. And one of them, and well, kind of in the midst of while I was doing that, you know, okay, I noticed like, eating whole food ingredients makes me feel super good. So like, that was kind of an initial takeaway. Mm-hmm. The second takeaway was like, I liked actually a lot of the diets, but some of them I didn't like super align with my lifestyle. And it was like, all right, I know this is only 30 days. So the second takeaway was like, okay, like I need to find sort of a diet or a nutritional regimen. It's probably a more, realistic term
Yeah.
that really like, you could do, for a long period of time. Because as soon as you switch some of those nutritional regimens, like you feel like crap for a little bit.
Yeah.
And during that time, I, was trying to explore Seattle, and something I noticed was that there are a ton of like apothecaries all over the place. Do you know what an
Okay.
apothecary is?
Yeah.
What is it? You just define it for your listeners.
I can't define it like as you could, but isn't it? They grow off? It's an ingredient that grows off trees, correct?
Well, so an apothecary is like what I envision when I think of an apothecary is like where witches like brew tonics. Like
okay, that's not what my mind was going to.
They sell like natural remedies and like crystals and
I
like
see.
stuff like that. And so I finally like stopped at one of these places in Seattle because I was like, what the fuck is this thing? Like this literally seems like apothecaries should have gone out of business in like medieval times,
Yeah.
So I go in and they're like, hey, are you new here? And I'm like, yeah, I'm just kind of exploring. And they're like, okay, we're teaching a class in 2 days and it's on adaptogens and tonics. And I was like, okay, that's so witchcrafty. It pains me. So I'm coming. Like I'm so curious now. So I show up and they serve us this tea. And long story short, the tea had a type of, medicinal or functional mushroom in it, reishi. And I just felt awesome effects, like was pretty mind blowing. I was like, felt really calm and relaxed. And like, I was like, man, this is all from mushroom. Like, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
And so that's when I really got into like functional mushrooms, natural remedies, medicinal mushrooms. And, that was really the trigger point for me. I was like, damn, those things are real. And so then I started doing a ton of research. I joined our local mushroom club. I got into mushroom foraging. I sat there on the board for a year and a half.
Wow.
And just like was all in. And I was like, okay, I am like I'm a huge believer in the power of these mushrooms from a health standpoint. Like I've seen it myself. How do I get these into people's diets? And that's really how Forij kind of started. It was like going through this dieting, like this journey with nutrition, this intrigue with nutrition, and then really landing on like, okay, whole food eating and like these mushrooms. And so that was kind of like the initial sort of kindling for Forij. Yeah.
Definitely. What did that R&D process look like then, taking mushrooms and functional ingredients to formulate what we know as you're selling granola now? What did that look like from your point of view?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of messing around with it for a long time. I was doing oatmeal for a while and then started to kind of, was just doing different things. Like I put it in nut mixes and it wasn't great. It was just like taking mushroom powders and throwing it in anything.
Yeah.
And then, I'd bring it into work and I was just like getting people at work to try it and I'd print out surveys and then I was just like showing up at local cafes and I'd be like, all right, try my stuff. And then, I went to the startup conference in Oakland with a friend and, I just was going to see him. I wasn't that interested in the conference. And a random angel investor I'm chatting with was like, oh, like, what do you do? And so I made it up. I was like, oh, like we do like the first like mushroom infused food products, like trying to get mushrooms into people's diets. And he was like, whoa, that's really cool. And I was like, wow. Yeah, it is, like totally lying.
Yeah.
And so he's like, send me your pitch deck. And I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. I'll send it to you. Like, no problem. Like literally went home, like went onto Fiverr.com, had somebody create a logo, like built the pitch deck. I used to work a lot in PowerPoint and then sent it to him. And at that point I was like, okay, I better take this thing a little more seriously.
Yeah.
And that's like really how we kind of got into it.
Wow.
At first.
So I'm curious, how did that relationship evolve? And was this a really crucial standing point for Forij longevity?
Yeah. I mean, it kind of fizzled out over a couple months. He was just like, he's like, I think I have a friend who'd be really interested in this and that, that was going on. And while that was going on, like, I was just going around trying to sell it. I was like, okay, I might as well show him that I'm selling this thing,
Yeah.
And so then I started kind of selling it and then iterating and then it just like spiraled out of control from there. And we got some initial investment and my brother works in the food industry. So he was kind of like chatting with him about it and sourcing ingredients and, and then at that point it was like, ooh, like, I'm just like, this is fun, like this is like, this is the thing that like my soul, like not Forij particularly, but something I'm passionate about that you can just like build and focus on. And at that point, like I was cheating on my work pretty hard and I cheated on work for about a year. I tell everybody that. I'm like, if you really want to be an entrepreneur, like you should cheat on work. Like don't quit your job. Like just cheat on work for a while.
Yeah.
Make sure. So
Definitely. So in those early days, where did you go for production and packaging? I know you might
yeah.
have been making it yourself, but how did you evolve from there?
Yeah. So a couple guys that I had become friends with in Seattle, because I didn't know anybody in Seattle either. I kept noticing they kept posting on Instagram like this one brand, and I'm like, okay, they have to know these founders. Like you could tell it was like, yo, like the homies X brand. It was called Joe's Chocolate Co. And so I finally reached
Yeah.
out and was like, hey, like, do you know Joe? And they're like, no, dude, like, but I know Peter who owns Joe Chocolate Co. And I was like, okay, can you connect us? Like, I've got this thing I'm working on, and they're like, sure. So then he was the one who was like, okay, like here's where you can get packaging locally. Like here's maybe where you could bake. And for a while we were just baking in our kitchen, and then we were renting space at like a local cafe out of pizza ovens, and then like
Wow.
went to a commercial kitchen, and then moved into a co-manufacturer and like scaled up from there. But it was really like Peter who was super helpful early on to be like, I'd call and I'd just be like, dude, how do you do this? And he'd be like, all right. And he was just such a good teacher, and he'd be like, okay, like here's here's what you're going to do, like Google this, like look at this,
Wow.
like I'll send you this guy's name, and it's always people like that kind of make the difference. And actually Peter and I
Definitely.
are going to sail around Catalina Island this upcoming weekend, so we're like good buddies now,
That's awesome.
which is awesome. Yeah.
It's amazing. Well, in the early days there, I'm curious, what were some of your main marketing strategies and some of the stuff I see on LinkedIn also? I love watching the guerrilla marketing you do. I know you go to retail, some of the plain actually experiences you have done.
Yeah, fun.
What are some of your strategies that really market well for Forij?
Yeah, I mean early on, like there wasn't, that's like right when COVID hit,
Yeah.
like right when we were creating a packaged product, and it was like I have no idea what to do, and so it was giving away samples, it was going to local cafes, it was showing up at cafes, sampling product, trying to sample product where I could. But at that time when COVID was hitting, like all that stuff got stopped, and so then it was like, okay, well, maybe we should move on to digital marketing. um I'd send it to like my friends who were like micro influencers, and it was challenging when we had no money, and it was height of COVID, you couldn't do anything.
Yeah, definitely.
um Now, like, yeah, I'm very intrigued and interested in guerrilla marketing for sure. And
Yeah.
it just brings me joy. Like, so I think what you're referencing is like, whenever I fly on airplanes, I'll like do product giveaways where like I walk around the plane with product and a sign, and people give me their seat numbers. And then like a couple of, a couple of, flight attendants have let me like get on the loudspeaker and like announce the winner. And like, dude,
Wow.
it's hella fun. But yeah. So I am living out of out of a van, and it's
Yeah.
branded in our branding. And so I was, driving around the country for a while and like showing up at grocery stores. And, it's just like, I think it's really easy to get caught up and think, okay, how do we market this product to everybody ever? It's like, how
Yeah.
do we scale? And I like to take kind of, the opposite approach of like, okay, like you just got to get one customer at a time. And like customers react to authenticity and to like sharing a story and really connecting on a personal level and having a conversation. And so that's a lot of what we do, and it's really helped us learn more about our messaging and our positioning, and kind of more along those lines.
Definitely. Well, I'm curious, you mentioned living out of the van. Logistically, what does your life look like as the founder then? I know you go to retail stores a lot, make those relationships. Where do you work from? What does that look like?
Yeah, cafes, Starbucks is a lifesaver. I shower at Planet Fitness.
That's awesome.
And it's literally an hour by hour process, because you're like, okay, like I'm going to go do work here, and then I'm going to go to this store, and then I'm going to go work out. And then like, you go work somewhere and like they don't have Wi-Fi or they don't have outlets, and you're like, well, fuck. Okay, now I got to go find somewhere else. You like go somewhere else. And you're like, well, I'm actually closer to this store now, so I'm going to go here now instead. Okay, but like now I can't work out till later. And then you're like, wait, I haven't eaten all day. Like I'm starving. Like I
Yeah.
need to go eat something, And so it's pretty chaotic, but it's fun, man. It's, and you get to see a lot of the country and see friends. And so
Definitely.
it's a good time. I'm sleepy most of the time though.
Well, I'm curious, with some of the consumer feedback you've received with the guerrilla marketing and some marketing strategies, what would you say is the main demographic, if you can depict that?
Yeah, we kind of have two segments that we're working through right now in terms of how to prioritize. So one is like more of this aging population. So it's like aging, they're kind of re-looking at their kind of health and just trying to like really, in my mind, like stay healthier for longer.
Yeah.
And so, we just make really clean products with these mushrooms. And these mushrooms like have a lot of anti-inflammatory capabilities. So we see that being an intriguing point. And then it's more like young professionals or kind of like younger married couples who are starting, just like intrigued in health, have a disposable income, like are making proactive selections about keeping themselves healthy. And it's more of that younger demo. Mm-hmm. So those are kind of the two demographics that we're seeing right now.
Definitely. Well, I like to conclude each episode with this. If you could share one piece of advice with an aspiring entrepreneur, maybe something you've learned or regrets along the way, what would you say that would be?
Yeah, it's a good question. I like the cheat on your job one because I don't think people talk about it. Like I just chat with a lot of younger entrepreneurs who are like, okay, like I've quit my job. Like I have a 3-month savings. Like I know I won't make money for 3 months, but then I'll start making money and I'll be able to pay myself. And I'm like, dude, don't rely on that. It's been, I don't know, a year and a half for me that I haven't paid myself.
Yeah.
I still have a part-time job.
Okay.
From my old job. So this old job I was in, I left, but there was a client that I stayed on retainer with that I still work with.
Okay.
And so I still like have, a job and I don't feel pressure to like take money out of the business, and I can still like be a human. Yeah. And it's about balancing and it's about time management and that, but I also actually kind of like the other job. Like it's fun. It kind of brings me back to reality sometimes. But yeah, it's like, cheat on your job. Like if you're really interested in starting a company, like, okay, like go and find a job where like you can scale your time and it's like you can provide great value to that job and do your job, in 10 hours a week. And then you can use that other 30 to build something on the side.
Definitely.
So
amazing. Well, Parker, thanks for taking the time to join me. And to the listeners out there, make sure to check out Forij at forij.co.